With all the new games coming out in the next year or so with their own collector's editions, I thought it would be a fun idea to explore the history of collector's editions specifically. What I found was that collector's editions originally weren't called collector's editions at all. In fact, they were called Feelies, and only certain companies back in the day would give you these Feelies. If you were to walk into a hobby store in 1982 and you mosey your way to the PC games section, it would just have a bunch of these role-playing text adventures. A lot of these adventures are created by just one company, Infocom. A lot of these were just the game, but some companies wanted to stand out, and so they would include a little bonus inside. Infocom was the king of these little bonuses. These bonuses, or Feelies, were mostly exclusive to the text adventure game genre, with titles such as Deadline and the more renowned Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. Infocom was a big player in the game back in the day, no pun intended. In case you are curious, for the first game ever, Deadline, you would receive some pretty enticing items. This means not only would you open up the game and get the game itself, but you would also get the following items: a police case file containing interview transcripts, coroner's report, laboratory findings, correspondence letters between characters in the game, a photograph of the crime scene, maps, other bits and bobs connected to the game itself. You almost get a full-on tabletop board game for just the base game. I just want to reiterate too that not all companies would do this. Infocom was kind of the holy grail. As I mentioned earlier, Infocom also did Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. And in case you're wondering, yes, that came with Feelies and bonuses as well. So to understand how we got from Feelies to collector's editions, we first need to understand the downfall of Feelies as a whole. From what I could find, the overall consensus to the downfall of the Feelies specifically was how cost effective it was to make all of the items. Just from a cost effective standpoint, that a lot of these publishers couldn't keep up with just printing all of these goodies and stuff like that, because you gotta keep in mind too, the Feelies, you're paying for the base game and you're getting all of these bonuses. You're not even paying a premium like you would with a collector's edition. You know, some collector's editions going for hundreds of dollars nowadays, whereas the base game would nowadays $60, $70, $70, $80, something like that. Back in the day, you just paid for the base game and you would get all of these goodies. So from a cost effective standpoint, it was bound to kind of fade out. While the mid to late 90s marked the era of the collector's edition, companies were still printing Feelies in their games all the way up until the late 90s. So as I'm actually reading, a little bit of the wiki about Infocom, the fandom wiki, I'm actually kind of learning a little bit here that sometimes they would include these Feelies as a form of copy protection, right? So you wouldn't be able to even solve the puzzle of certain games without those little extra content provided by some of the items in the box, so essentially, if you pirated the game, you wouldn't know how to solve certain puzzles without those little goodies in the box. So it was a little bit ahead of its time for the copyright protection. So while Infocom ended up dying in 1989, shutting their doors after Activision bought them in 1986, that didn't mark the end of an era. In fact, no, quite the opposite. Infocom had already opened the floodgates. It was on like Ping Pong and Donkey Kong's Hong Kong, okay, buddy? Everybody and their mother was now putting Feelies into their games. We're talking coins, we're talking maps, we're talking guides, we're talking little documents that have info about the characters within the game and little, dialogue, bonuses and stuff. So there were plenty of companies that came around in the wake of Infocom and their madness, right? Everybody wanted a little piece of that money pie. And so the Feelies lived on up until The Legend of Zelda, right? And I know I talked a little bit about it earlier, but the Ocarina of Time was the first collector's edition to really enter the scene, right? And this is where it goes from, okay, there's these cool little knickknacks included into my game, to, oh, now I'm forking out extra to be able to collect something made for that, the sole purpose of collecting. Once that switch happened, and developers realized, and these companies realized that they could make a little bit more of a profit off of essentially the same thing, you started to see a decline of these feelies. No longer did companies want to give you the base game along with all of these cool knickknacks and gadgets. They wanted to give you the full game and those knickknacks and gadgets for a little bit of a premium, you know, a little bit of cheddar on top of that original price. Okay, so with blood in the water of the money sharks, we saw a complete shift in the consumer side of little collectibles for games. Since then, we've had generations of collectible editions with little figurines, you know, maps. I remember for Skyrim, for I think it was like the PlayStation 3, I had received it was like a faux cloth map, like it was like some cheap material, but it was just like a full-on map that I hung up in my room of the land of Skyrim. You know, it had Whiterun on the map, just like the map in game, and you could, you know, and it's things like that I think are super interesting. But that also brings me to the other side, right? The Fallout 76 canvas bag side of collectibles and collector's editions, and, you know, the pitfalls that kind of come with that sort of thing. What I mean by that is companies can now get away with scraping the bottom of the barrel in terms of merchandise content, collectibles, and gear like that, whereas they used to throw that in for free. Now they're giving you like the shittiest quality, like people's plastic figurine. The canvas bag situation again, you know, a lot of people received, what was it, like a nylon or polyester type bag, but they had paid the extra money to receive the canvas bag, and after enough backlash, you know, Bethesda caved in and corrected their mistake. But companies they've been getting a lot more greedy with their behavior. But that is a topic for another time. For now, I just wanted to highlight the existence and importance of feelies in gaming history and explore how collector's editions may have eventually filled that void left behind in the wake of their collapse. Anyways, thanks for tuning in, and I'll catch you in the next one.